Hello everyone and welcome back to the CDL podcast channel. This episode today is going to be a rather long one. Just warning you all because obviously I'm recording this here on Tuesday. It's probably going to go up kind of towards the night going into Wednesday for the first major. I'm going to be doing some rather quick reactions to the CDL Super Week to start it out, and then probably get into some more power rankings heading into the major, followed by my predictions for that first major. That major number one for the CDL. Please be sure to leave a like if you enjoy this. Also comment your thoughts down below on the numerous things we're going to talk about in this one, and give your thoughts on maybe some predictions in the major, and then subscribe if you enjoy this and you want to see more CDL podcast content. I love doing it, as you guys all know, and we just hit 200 subs. Now we're trying to keep growing our community. So first, before we dive into like predictions for the episode, I want to kind of go back and look at the CDL Super Week and just jump into some quick thoughts on each team's week, what they did, how they're looking and stuff, what kind of like their outlook is, because going match by match with the absurd amount of matches we had this week would just get very drawn out, because usually if we have like 8-9 matches on a weekend or something, it's kind of fun to like go over each one individually, but obviously with the absurd amount of matches we had this week with the Super Week, it wouldn't be all that practical to go through and kind of digest each match. But we're going to go kind of like bottom of the standings to top of the standings and kind of say thoughts on them. So we're kind of go towards like the negative teams up towards the positive. So the first team we're obviously going to talk about here is London. We'll start with them. There's not much to say here. Obviously, they're overall just a very disappointing team thus far. They had a 3-0 loss to the Subliners, then a 3-2 loss to Dallas, a 3-1 loss against the Thieves, and a 3-0 loss against Minnesota. I just really think they need Zero back is kind of what it comes down to. Parasite isn't bad or anything, but the team just isn't clicking. They obviously haven't had that much practice together because the whole Zero news kind of came down later that they were going to switch him out for somebody, and Parasite kind of got the short end of the stick. Honestly, I feel kind of bad for him because this was kind of his chance to get back in the league and prove he can still play. And it's not like he's like played awful by any means and everybody's just like, oh my god, Parasite is so bad he needs to get out of the league. Like, he's played well enough to like be considered for an expansion team or whatever, because individually he's been okay. But it's just unfortunate he kind of got placed on one of the least talented teams in the league probably, and not only that, but he had to replace that team's probably best player. So it's not like one of their worst players had issues and couldn't get on the roster. He had to replace arguably their best player and then try to fill his shoes, so it's just going to look kind of rather disappointing, I guess you could say. Yeah, and honestly, Alex and Dylan are just way too inconsistent. And Shawnee's a good player, but once again, Shawnee is kind of like a consistent 1 or 0.9. Like, he's a good player, but he kind of needs superstars around him to be successful, in my opinion. So I just don't really see a way this team turns it around unless maybe Zero comes back and is like a superstar for them. So right now, their outlook is kind of negative, but it's unfortunate because obviously I know there are a lot of London fans out there, and their team honestly coming into the year looks pretty solid, but just unfortunate situation with Zero. And they practiced with him for so long that they were expecting to play with him, and then late before the like first set of matches they had to switch him out. So just an unfortunate situation for London. I'm hoping they get Zero back and kind of figure it out and can redeem themselves, so hopefully they can make the playoffs or something. And then the Serge are next up. They had a 3-0 loss versus Minnesota and a 3-2 loss to Thieves, and then a 3-1 loss to New York Subliners. So they went 0-3 in the Super Week, a little unfortunate, but I do see a little bit of potential with this team. The London team, there's just not a whole lot of potential there until possibly they get Zero back, but honestly, I do see a little potential with this Seattle team, and when I say a little, I truly mean a little. It's not some like huge potential I see, but there's like a glimmer there. Octane is playing fine, but not to the MVP level we normally see him at, which gives me a little bit of hope maybe for them to improve, because I think Octane, I'm never going to doubt him until we see him have a bad year, like for a full year or something. I think Octane can turn it around, and that sounds like I'm saying he's playing like horrible or something. Octane's still probably one of the top ARs, despite not playing all that great so far, like to his standards, which is unfortunate because he's, for most people's standards, he's playing pretty good this year, but for his standard, he's set for himself so high, he's a little bit below that right now. So if he can just step it up a little bit, I think that'd help this team. Gunless is looking awesome. I'm happy to see him doing well after his tough year last year, and honestly, just tough couple years he's had here. Obviously got benched on Chicago last year, and just overall has been kind of hopping around teams, and people have been saying he's a toxic teammate. So I'm happy to see him. It seems like this team is doing fine in terms of their chemistry and stuff, and I'm just happy to see him doing well. The 60 to 244 hertz or whatever has really helped him out switching that, so it's good to see him playing well, and with him playing like an MVP, that also gives this team like a glimmer of hope to maybe improve. Looney actually isn't playing too awful either. Not great, but he's playing about what you'd expect him to do. Honestly, the issue has been Looney and Prestinni, though. Prestinni has just been so inconsistent, which is kind of a hallmark of him. Usually he's a decently inconsistent player, but in the past he's been on more talented teams, so I think they've been able to hide his inconsistencies a little more. And it really bums me out to say this because I think Prestinni is a very good player, and I really like him a lot as a player. I love the style of play he has, kind of that just careless, reckless entry kind of player where he's willing to throw his life to win the game. I love players like that. They're my favorite to play with if I'm playing like ranked play or something. But he's just been so inconsistent, which, like I said, sucks because I think if he can be like consistently like at the level we saw him for a while on E United there, like he's an awesome player. I just don't think him and Looney are a good match is kind of my analysis of this because I think Preston needs someone to follow him up. He's going to be the entry guy and he can maybe get that one kill and like tag another guy. And he's really good at causing that chaos. But when he causes that chaos, he needs to have his second sub come in and clean it up. Typically that's kind of like when him and Abezy were together. Abezy kind of slid in first still with Prestinni, but like that allowed Prestinni to be more of a slaying sub, and he had somebody to like clean up for him and that he could really rely on to slay, and that's when he was at his best. And then obviously later on he wasn't sliding and he was using a Maddox more with Simp and Abezy, but when he had those two flying around in front of him cleaning stuff up, he was playing at a different level. I'd love to see this team add John. I know it sounds weird to drop Looney and stuff, but I know Looney's your IGL, but I feel like between Octane and Gunless and Prestinni, you have enough voices that can IGL that if you had John in this team, Prestinni could slide in first, kind of cause the chaos, and John could pick up the slack and just absolutely slay. Then obviously Gunless and Octane on the back line are going to be able to compete with anybody with their ARs. I just love to see John in this team. Don't know how possible it is, and I also don't know if John is still at that level that he used to be at, so that's also a question mark. That could be risky to do. But I do think they still have small dark horse potential if this roster, let's say they come into this major one, and Prestinni's playing out of his mind. I do think they have potential to maybe make a run to like top 8, top 6, simply off the fact that they do have talent. And the next team's the Florida Mutineers. Obviously, another disappointing team to say the least. This is why this part of the podcast is a little depressing because we're talking from bottom to top, so we're talking about all the teams that have struggled. But they're now 1-4 after losses to Paris, Faze, and OpTic this week. They beat LAG here in the Super Week. Skies just hasn't been the man we're used to him being, and Slacked has like a 0.7 something, and Hardpoint 0.77 or something like that. They've been a bad control team thus far as well. They do have some bright spots, I'd say, in Neptune and Awakening. Neptune's played very well, especially for it being like his first couple weeks here of pro COD matches. And Big Wake has been awesome in Serge. I think he has like #1 Serge KD, which is good to see too because a lot of people were questioning if that would carry over. People accusing him of cheating last year. They were like, this kid came out of nowhere in the AM scene, wasn't even placing high in there. Then he took over on Florida and helped him to win events. So it's good to see him playing well. Kind of validates the fact that, you know, his last year maybe wasn't a fluke if he's playing this well. So good for him. Happy to see that for him. I'm also not that worried about Skies personally. I think Skies will get it turned around as well. And Slack typically, kind of like Apathy, starts to do better as the year goes on. As it gets later in the year, he seems to be a little better. So I think they can turn it around. It just may not be for this major. This is one of those teams, though, I'm going to just like say, you know what, chill out. There's no need to hit the panic button on this team at all. One thing I kind of would like to see is, let's say, I mean, I just thought of this right now. Let's say like, let's say maybe Seattle, I don't know. I don't really know if it'd be that worth. I was going to say if Seattle ends up benching Looney for somebody, if this team could get Looney in for Slacked, possibly if they continue to struggle. But Looney and Slack, they're kind of pretty similar players. They can both play like a sub flex role. They're both kind of IGL type players. So I don't know if that would work that well, but it's kind of just something that popped up in my mind. But either way, I don't think it's time to hit the panic button for this team. I think Awakening and Neptune are going to continue to play really well, and I think Skies is going to pick it up and be the guy we're used to seeing. And even if Slack stays where he's at and Skies picks up to being the guy we're used to seeing, I think this team would go from 1-4 to like a 3-2 team and be right in there in the top 8, top 6. And then if Slack can hit the form we know he can help lead this team has potential to still hit that top 6 that we thought they had to start the year. And then we got Toronto Ultra. This one's kind of breaking my heart. They're 1-4. They lost to Faze, OpTic, Paris, and LAG this week, going 0-4. I expected them to probably lose to Faze and OpTic because, I mean, I know like in my prediction video I did have them upsetting Faze just kind of for fun, but I mean, obviously losing to OpTic and Faze is no shock. Those are probably the two best teams in the game. But if they are going to be a top team like they say they can be and they want to be, they have to beat teams like Paris and LAG consistently. Cammy's looked unreal by the way, he's been awesome. But the other three have been pretty inconsistent. Methods hasn't been as consistent as we're used to seeing him. Kleenex, who's always been a little bit inconsistent, is continuing to show those inconsistencies and stuff. He's had some crazy games, but he's also had some real duds. And then Bance, he's Mr. Inconsistency normally ever since Black Ops 3 when he had his great year. They honestly could have beaten Faze too, let's be honest. Pretty sure they... Oh my god, that series was so long ago, but they lost it 3-1, I believe. Or maybe 3-2, I can't remember. But I know, like, during that series, I was tweeting about it and stuff, like, Toronto threw a lot of maps. They should have won that series, which is hopeful for them. I think Cammy's going to stay in top form all year. I mean, he looked very good, I believe, with that Units team I think he was on in Black Ops 4 Champs, and then he carried that into Modern Warfare. He was awesome all last year, and he seems to be awesome again. So it seems to me like Cammy is here to stay as one of the top players in the CDL. And I think Methods and Kleenex are going to come around and become more consistent as they get more used to this game, especially Kleenex. If you guys have heard my thoughts about him or know any of my thoughts about him, I think Kleenex is one of the best young players in the league. I personally think he might be a top 5 sub for years to come. So I think he's going to get it figured out. And make them a well-rounded team. If those two are like playing at their form, they could be another top 6 team. The issue is once again Mr. Bance. If he's on, this team could be all the way like a top 4 team. But if he has his cold games, which he's prone to do, they're going to lose a lot of series. By the way, like I said to start the year, I think Classic is still 100% better than Bance right now. Classic looks awesome. We'll get to him later. He looks like a great player, and Bance has been inconsistent. Bance has been not bad, but just inconsistent is the word for it. I think Ultra would be at least 3-2 if they had a Classic over Bance right now, but you can't really dwell on that. I think Ultra will be just fine. Then LAG's the next team. They're 2-3 after losing to Florida and losing to OpTic, but beating Ultra. They get to start in winners, however, though, because they finished 3rd in their group despite being 2-3. They're such a weird team to me. In the standings, technically, they are ahead of Florida, Toronto, and Seattle, but I think they have a lower ceiling than Florida, Toronto, and Seattle. I can see them pulling off upsets on anybody. They're going to play the correct way. They're a bunch of veteran players that are very good. And I can see them pulling off any upset, but nobody on this team has like the takeover potential that can carry you past just pulling off a few upsets and turn it into a weekend long run. They looked solid in Search, and they play pretty fundamental, like I said, but Apathy has been inconsistent like usual, and the other talent on the team is just kind of average. It's middle of the pack. The one potential I see, like I said, in this team having upset potential in the major is the fact that they get to start in the winners bracket, so that gives them an extra crack at a shot to lose. But they do start with LA Thieves, so that's a tough first-round matchup, I believe. And if they're going to upset, they have to be... Vivid has to take over in Search, and they have to be almost spotless in Search and win every map. And Apathy has to go kind of donk mode, like they like to say about Apathy. He's kind of got to go crazy and take over like we saw him do on a couple. We saw him do that on a Crossroads map. We've got to see him do that pretty consistently for this team to make an upset and maybe make a run through the winners bracket. The next team's Paris Legion, who's also 2-3, but kind of in a different way. They showed a ton of potential. Kind of like I thought I thought they had to start the year. Like I really thought Paris had a lot of potential to start the year. And then in week 1, they really disappointed me. So I was like, darn it, maybe I was wrong. But they kind of seem to be proving me right now with the potential they showed. They took out Florida and Ultra, and they should have taken out Faze this week as well to go 3-0, and then it would be a whole different story because they would have been, 3-2 then? Yeah, because they started 0-2 in the first week. They'd have been 3-2 then, and probably be in the winners bracket. Scraps looked awesome all week, kind of looked like he could have superstar potential for this team. Classic has been absolutely fantastic at this game, like I mentioned. And Aqua looks like he is a top AR. One of the top ones, and the only question mark on this team is Fire. Fire's kind of cost them some maps, sometimes by playing so poorly, but he improved throughout the week, kind of showing me that, like, you know, the improvement's there. Obviously, we got to give him a little bit of slack because, I mean, he's, in his 2nd week of being a pro, and he looked pretty bad in the first week, I'll be honest, and then to start this week, he kind of looked a little shaky, and as the week went on, he improved. He had some kind of blunders when he punched instead of just shot Simp when he was one-shot in ring on that map 5 raid Search. I think that kind of was what spiraled the map out of control when Simp got that 1v3, and I think Paris could have potentially won that if he gets that kill there. Overall, he's just been really inconsistent, but if he's as talented as people say he is and can hit that stride with this team, the sky could be the limit for them. I seriously think if he hits that, this is a legit top 6 contender and could even make runs to top 4 with consistency from Fire. He's only played like 5 pro matches. He can do it. this team is going to be a force in S&D all year. And like I said, if Fire can hit his potential, they're already pretty solid at respawn with him playing bad. So if he even can hit like 3/4 of what people say his potential is, they could become like a pretty consistently good respawn team. And then they're actually like a really scary team that could be a dark horse to win a lot of games and maybe even make a run at a tournament later this year. Minnesota Rocker sits at 3-2, but unfortunately for them, they're in losers bracket. They took out Serge. They got absolutely steamrolled by the subliners. Then they took out Ravens. My concern with them is that they had an easy schedule with Ravens and Serge, and they were able to take them both out, but then they played one decent team in NYSL and got absolutely dismantled, mostly by Simp. He just took over in that series. But Rocker, obviously a force in S&D. They might be the best Serge team in the game. But I want to see more consistency from them in respawn. More out of Prestinni, to be honest. I feel like attachment accuracy played pretty well in general. Obviously, they probably had their bad maps too, but like overall, they played pretty well. But Major Maniac and I almost said Prestinni. Prista didn't play as well as I know they can. And if they can hit their stride, I think Minnesota is going to be able to make noise. It just sucks for them because I feel like they're a team that deserves to be in winners bracket over LAG for sure, but just the way with the group shakeout, they unfortunately are 3-2 and are in the losers bracket. But I do think they have potential to make a run if they can get their respawns more consistent. Subliners are 3-2. They took out the Ravens, Minnesota, and I believe Serge, and they lost to Empire. They honestly should have beaten Empire 3-0 in that series, but they just blew that control map in that round 4, and that just kind of spiraled into them losing full, I feel like, and then they got reverse swept. Clay's playing on another level right now. And Asim is kind of a bit inconsistent like usual, but he's been mostly great. DiamondCon is awesome for it being his first pro matches, and Mac has been underwhelming. If Hydra is truly coming, I heard that he got his visa. I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but I thought I heard he did. It feels like the player to replace in their team right now is Mac, but I doubt management wants that. They kind of invested in Mac last year, kind of made him their franchise player by sticking with him. And regardless, this team seems to have crazy potential even with the current roster, so I'm excited to see what they do going forward because I think they could potentially be a top team. I just hope they're willing to take a risk and sub in Hydra for somebody if that comes down to it. Let's say this weekend they have a nice weekend, maybe get like top 6, and Asim keeps playing crazy well, Clay keeps playing crazy well, DiamondCon keeps playing crazy well, and Mac has another inconsistent event. And then they continue to go forward, and Mac keeps being inconsistent, but the other 3 are playing awesome, and they just constantly keep getting top 6, or like they look like they're on the edge. I hope they're willing to take a risk and sub Hydra in for someone, even if it's not Mac. It's obviously not going to be Clay, but if it's probably between Asim and Mac, if one of those 2 is struggling a lot, but the team is still being like a top 6 team, I really hope they take the risk and max out their potential with Hydra in there, because if Hydra is as nuts as people say he is, that could propel this team even higher than the ceiling of this current roster. But regardless, not get ahead of ourselves too much. I think this current roster is scary good for how little time they've had together. Like Clay said, they had like 75% less time to practice together than like every roster in the league. So I'm really excited to see them in the major. Glad they got in the winners bracket. Happy for Clay too. It would kind of suck if he was to get kind of forced out of Empire just because of the way the league format went. And then he gets to a sucky team. It's good to see that their team is at least going to be competitive this year. Kind of getting to the cream of the crop now. We got LA Thieves, who are now 4-1 going into the major. They obviously only lost to Empire and then beat everyone else they played. The whole beef that went down on Twitter, I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of on the Thieves side with this one. That's all we'll say on that. What a crazy day of beef, though, with everybody talking about that guy who I didn't know who it was. Thorin was going at everybody, and I kind of tweeted a little bit about it. I didn't really get too much involved in any of the COD stuff. That was kind of whatever. It was just kind of comedy to read about. The whole JCap and Hastro thing was crazy, so we'll see how that plays out. Only one I kind of did mention, if you guys follow me on Twitter, you saw it. I kind of talked about Hecz. Hecz, I wouldn't say I was like a huge OpTic fan growing up or anything, but they were the one team that produced content, and I loved COD, so I was always watching their content and stuff. And like Vision was an awesome, like whether you're an OpTic fan or not, to be basically a one-man team and making Vision, that was an awesome piece of content. It was just engaging. It was really fun to watch. And Hecz definitely has some talent to do stuff like that, filmmaking or video making, whatever you want to call it. So when I saw him kind of attack Hecz, that one kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, okay, this one, I mean, everything else is like whatever. You're kind of just hating on the pro COD players for no reason, it seemed like. That was like whatever. But just the hate on Hecz and just kind of like calling him out for kind of how he came and like that he hopped onto people's coattails and like rode to the top. I mean, a lot of you probably wouldn't be huge OpTic fans without Hecz storytelling with that. And I'm sure a lot of you are huge OpTic fans because most COD fans are. But a lot of you probably wouldn't be as big of OpTic fans you are today if it wasn't for Hecz storytelling ability with them. So I kind of got a little upset with that one tweet that he had. But other than that, it was kind of all fun to see Twitter go into a craze and see everybody like going at the COD community all banding together to go at this one guy. But anyways, back to LA Thieves. I'm super impressed with this team. Honestly, like I said, I thought they had potential to be a top 4 team coming into the season, but I was worried because of the whole OGLA situation last year where they also had the talent to be top 4, but just never realized it. But my guy Kenny is looking so good like usual. I may be kind of biased there because I've told you guys a million times, Kenny's like one of my favorite players. Slasher as well. I really like Slasher, and he looks great this year. I mean, when doesn't Slasher look like a top AR? The one thing that's standing on this team, though, is TJ is playing out of his mind. TJ looks crazy this year, which TJ's looked crazy in the past. In the beginning of Black Ops 4, he looked awesome. He's kind of also, like I've said about a lot of players, is inconsistent. But so far this year, he looks awesome. In Search and Destroy, he looks crazy as well. Tempest played great, but he's been on and off. This team has potential to take the major. I truly think they have potential to win this next upcoming major, especially because they get LAG in the first round of Winners Bracket, which is definitely the easiest match in Winners Bracket because, I mean, the other teams they could have played first round are New York or OpTic. So LAG is definitely the easiest matchup, which I think gives them a benefit. Then I believe they do have to play Faze if they win, though. So like I said, I think this team has potential to take the major. If Temp can play as well as he did at his ceiling in some points that, though, oh my god, I think this team has crazy potential. Next team in the standings is the Empire, who are also 4-1. They did lose in the Super Week. Obviously, they only lost to Minnesota in Week 1. Not much to say here about this team. These top teams we don't have a lot to say about. We kind of know who they are. It's more of those middle of the pack and bottom teams that we're kind of figuring out who they are, but the top teams we pretty much know. Huke may very well be the best player in the game. Shottzyy looks awesome like we'd expect. I think the only thing that can make this team improve, in my opinion, and is their only weakness right now, is Crim and illey. I don't think either of those two are playing to their potential. That's not to say that they're not great players. Crim is the best player to ever play Call of Duty, and illey is one of the most talented young guys there are in the league. I just think both of them haven't found their stride in this game yet. I know they're going to get there, though, so I'm not worried. I just don't know if they're going to get there fast enough for this major, which is why I have questions on if they're going to win it. They certainly are probably just like the top 4 in the standings. They're one of the top contenders to win this next major. The only thing that worries me, like I said, is the fact that Crim and illey haven't seemed to hit their top potential yet. So I do think this team's going to compete for every major that happens this year and champs. They could win them all. I just don't know if they're going to win the first one because I don't know if those two are going to make enough improvements fast enough to make them better than OpTic or Faze. OpTic's 4-1, the next team in the standings. Their only loss was to Faze in Week 1. They seem to have made some pretty good improvements in Search and stuff, which is great. And then Envoy and Scump seem like one of the top sub-duos in the league. Quite honestly, sorry, I think my recording cut out there, but I think we're back here. Quite honestly, I think what I was saying last was I think that they have the best AR duo in the league. OpTic does. To me, this is what can propel them to the top. On 2 AR maps, which is pretty much every single one in this game, I don't think there are too many teams who can outshine Formal and Dashy on the AR. And if those two can pretty much bully their way through respawns, this team can improve in S&D like they have been. They're probably a favorite to win the first major right behind Faze. And then lastly, Atlanta Faze, they're 5-0. They had the whole snaking controversy and everything, so hopefully that doesn't in Cellium's head too much. But I mean, not much to say here. Again, we know Arcitys is one of the best ARs. Cellium is a top flex, and they have the best sub-duo in the league. I still think Abezy might be the best player in the world, but I have ranted on that enough in the past. They should be the favorite for the first major, probably. The only question I have is in the fact that OpTic did look stronger in Respawn, so I wonder if OpTic plays better in Search if they could take out Faze. And I also think the top 4 to 6 teams are all pretty close in terms of where they're at, so I could see anyone getting upset before the finals, to be honest. Alright, so now that we're through with that, we'll get into power rankings. My mic's been a little bit weird. My recording software has been a little bit weird, so I'm not 100% sure if it seems like there's a little bit of cuts in between like the last few minutes, but if there is, I apologize. My recording software has been kind of weird. But anyways, we'll get into the power rankings quickly. Kind of go over the power rankings of teams going into the major. So kind of where I rank them. This isn't like a definitive like 1 through 12, I believe 1 has the best chance of winning the major, 2, but it's pretty close. As you'll kind of see later on, there's one team that is a little bit higher in the standings that I place a little lower just because I don't have as much faith in them to win the major. But we'll get into it now. So we'll start at the bottom. Number 12, I have London Royal Ravens. This is pretty obvious. They're 0-5. They have Parasite in. They haven't been as practiced as much. Doesn't seem like they have as much potential, so they're at the bottom. And they're kind of in like a tier of their own. They're kind of like the bottom teams I don't think have any chance to win the major, unfortunately for them. And then at 11, I have Seattle Serge. Obviously, they're in the losers bracket to start, but I feel like they're in a new tier that's like probably not going to win a match, probably going to lose right away, but like this small sliver of hope that they have a dark horse run to make a little bit of noise. In that same tier at number 10 is LAG. They're in the winners bracket, which gives them more of a hope, but I don't see them moving much past like a round or two. I don't see them winning their match in the winners match. But if they do, who knows, that could spark a run or something. But I have them at 10. But simply, the reason I have them below Florida and Toronto, who is my 9, is Florida, and 8 is Toronto, is because, yes, they're in the winners bracket, but they're 2 and 3, and Florida and Toronto are both 1 and 4. And I do think that come a couple weeks from now, Florida's talent will start to pick up, Toronto's talent will start to pick up, and I think they're both better than LAG. So I kind of have them all in one tier, as well as with number 7, who is Paris, as teams who I think are dark horses to potentially win this major. I think all of them are a pretty long shot, especially because 3 of them are in losers bracket, but they're kind of in that tier where like they're solid teams with potential to keep improving and possibly make a run in the major. Then kind of in a new tier, at number 6 is Minnesota. They've showed a lot of potential. They're 3 and 2. The reason I don't think they have as much potential to win this major is because, unfortunately for them, despite being 3 and 2, they start in the losers. But that doesn't affect your power rankings. This isn't a list of teams on where I think they rank in terms of trying to win the major. This is where they're at right now in terms of strength of their team. And to me, they're at 6. They're here below the other 5 teams that are above them because I think the top 4 is pretty clear. Then their only competition to possibly be ahead of them is New York. And I put New York ahead of them simply because I think, well, first of all, New York absolutely dominated them when they played head-to-head. But I do think New York's ceiling is a little high right now because they're still learning as a team, so they're going to keep improving fast, where I think Minnesota's improvements will be a little slower. They may end up being the better team in the long run, but their improvements are going to be a little more kind of slow simply because they've been together for a while, so they kind of know what they are. And New York is just figuring themselves out and probably kind of still in that honeymoon stage of being a new team. And then at number 4, kind of a new tier here where we believe that they're solid contenders, the top contenders to win. That last tier was more like, yes, they could potentially win the major, but they're a little bit of a long shot, and this tier of the top 4 is kind of like the 4 teams that can win it all. At 4, I've got LA Thieves. I kind of think they have to be 4 because I truly think Atlanta and Chicago are both better than them at this point. And then they played Empire head-to-head, and Empire beat them 3-0. So I think you have to put Empire ahead of them, but LA Thieves are at 4. I've got Empire at 3, which means I've got OpTic at 2 and Atlanta Faze at 1. So the reason behind all this is I think OpTic could have very easily beat Faze, but they didn't, and Faze beat them, and Faze is 5-0. Faze has showed some cracks in the armor. They probably should have lost to OpTic 3-1, but their Surge looks insane. They're obviously really good at respawn. I think they're the most talented team in the game still, like we all do. So I have to put them at 1. They haven't lost a match yet, so it's kind of hard not to. They're the only undefeated team. And I think overall, OpTic has looked better in respawns than Dallas, and I think they've both looked a little bit inconsistent in search. So I think between the 2 of them, it's a toss-up, and you could put Dallas ahead of them, but for now, I'm putting Chicago ahead of them. So that puts my order at Atlanta 1, Chicago 2, then Empire, Thieves, New York, Minnesota, Paris, Toronto, Florida, LAG, Seattle Surge, and London Royal Ravens. The Paris one might shock you at 7. I'm going to be honest, when I was making up the list to kind of go through it, I almost put them at 6 ahead of Minnesota. I'm really high on Paris right now. I think they are an extremely good team. I just don't think people are going to be as high on them after the major because I think them being in losers bracket, especially if they lose that first match, people are going to be like, well, same old Paris. They kind of suck. But I have them at 7 because I actually think they have a ton of potential. But yeah, that's going to do it for my power rankings here. Now we're going to do a quick cut and then bring up the screen with like the CDL pick'em thing. And we're going to do our predictions for the first major coming up here. All right, so here is the Major 1 bracket, as you see, March 3rd through the 7th. We've got the whole pick'em thing up here. We're just going to go through kind of matchup by matchup. I'll probably start down in the elimination bracket here, since that's what the first matches are. Then we'll kind of fill this out up until the point where we can't fill it up anymore, and then we'll go up towards the top and go over that a little bit. So without further ado, let's just get right into our predictions here. We just did the cut from the power rankings. Hope it went smooth. It's the most limited edit you ever have to do, but for me, that's a lot since I have no experience with editing. But yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying this longer episode so far. It's kind of different because we've never really done reactions into predictions before. If you like this kind of format, let me know. I don't know if it would technically be more difficult or easier for me to do each week to just do one longer video where I kind of mix them both together. But just with the way this one worked, where the matches ended on a Sunday and then all of a sudden we're kicking off the tournament on a Wednesday, it was just kind of easier to do it this way. So kind of let me know if you guys like this format, because when on weekends that it potentially works, it might be something I look into. But we'll just get right into the predictions here. The elimination round 1, as you can see up here on my other points wise, I didn't do great in that opening weekend, and the super week, I forgot to go in and make my remake my predictions when they switched from the weekend because of the whole Texas situation. So I missed the first 2 days of predictions because I didn't know they didn't save the other ones that you already predicted. So my points are kind of shot for that one. But anyways, we'll get into this. Starting down on the bottom here, Serge versus Mutineers. This is a really weird matchup to me because it seems like the obvious pick is Mutineers. They were the better team coming into the year. They seem to be the better team, but I don't know. Something's just telling me to pick Serge in the upset. But at the same time, I still do think Mutineers is a stronger team. This is a weird one to me because, I think Royal Ravens is probably going to lose whoever they play. And I think whoever wins this, I really want to have Paris going far. But I just don't know who to pick in this one. I feel like Florida is the obvious pick and the pick that most people are going to make. But I want to pick Serge. I don't know who to go with. This is a bad one to start with because I'm literally lost in who I want to pick. Oh, my God, I'm sorry. I'm going to go with Florida, I think. I might come back and change this one. I don't know. I'll think about it kind of in the back of my head while I'm doing Toronto and London, because that one's pretty obvious who I'm going with. But I think I'm going to go Florida 3-2. I think overall Neptune can take over on the sub in this matchup, and I think Neptune and Slack can beat out the duo of Looney and Prestinni. I think they may be able to take over. At the same time, I really think that the Octane Gunless duo might be able to take over if Skies continues to play bad. But I'm going to go Florida 3-2, but this is a tough one because I think both of these teams do have potential to make a little bit of a run. I think the winner of this matchup, since they get Paris second, and Paris is a little bit inconsistent, I think the winner of this matchup could run it all the way to a deep run. But I'm going to go with Florida on this one, 3-2. And then the next match, it's Toronto-London. I think you know where I'm going this one. I think Toronto's going to come out hot. I think they're going to 3-0 London. For some reason, I think Toronto could be kind of in shambles as a team and kind of losing it, because I know Kleenex's old teammate that he loves is sitting on the bench, and they might have some turmoil or something because of the bad week. But they also do seem like a close-knit family, so I think they might be able to figure it out. I could see London coming out with the fire and having kind of that nothing-to-lose mentality and somehow pulling off an upset. But I think the safe pick here, based on the fact that we haven't seen London win a match yet, is to go with Toronto. And I think Toronto potentially could also come out with that fire and kind of try to get a momentum going. So I think they're going to win 3-0. And let me tell you, this makes the elimination round predictions brutal. I have zero confidence in that Serge Florida matchup. I'm pretty confident Toronto will win, but this makes this elimination round 2 impossible to predict, because coming into the year, once again, you'd say 100% Florida is winning a match against Paris every time they play, but Paris has looked really good recently, so I think I'm going with them. They 3-0'd Florida earlier. I think they're going to 3-1 Florida this time. They 3-0'd them in Super Week, but I think they're going to 3-1 them. As you guys know, I'm kind of high on Paris and a little bit lower on Florida right now just because they haven't been playing as well. So I'm saying screw it, and I'm going with Paris for the bowl prediction. Then in this bottom one, another impossible matchup to predict. Man, this is going to be a tough one. My bracket might be looking awful. But it's Minnesota-Toronto. It's obviously tough to predict because Toronto, I think, coming into the year, I would say was the better team. And they looked pretty good in a lot of their early matchups. They looked pretty good against Faze and stuff. But recently they looked pretty horrible. They went 0-4. I think I said they went 0-4 in Super Week. And Minnesota's 3-2. They probably should be in the winner's bracket, but they got an unfortunate draw with their group being so much better than the other one. I think the safe pick here is Minnesota, and I want to go with Toronto so bad. Based on what we've seen recently, I'm going to go 3-2 Toronto. I think these are two of the better search teams in the game. I think Toronto is a better respawn team, so I could see the game going something like Toronto takes the hard point, Minnesota takes the search, and then I think it'll really come down to that control, because I think if Toronto takes the control, they'll probably win the map 4 and win it 3-1. But I believe if Minnesota can take the control and go up 2-1, they'll lose that map 4 hardpoint, go 2-2, and then they'll win the search. I really think the series is going to come down to if Minnesota can win 2-3-5, because I do think Toronto's probably going to win 1-4. So I'd say it's going to be Minnesota 3-2. There's pretty much only 2 results I can see. I can see this being a Minnesota 3-2, or I can see it being a Toronto 3-1. Those are the 2 ones I think, and I'm just going to go with Minnesota since overall they've been the better team so far. Coming up here to the winners round 1. Honestly, winners round 1 in terms of picking, like, compared to the bottom, like to the loser bracket so far, I think it's a little more straightforward. I think OpTic's going to win. I think they're going to do it in a 3-1 fashion. I don't think this is a shoo-in, however, though a lot of people are probably thinking that it's a shoo-in because OpTic is so strong. But New York has looked really strong, and they're only improving. And I know Clay is going to come out with the fire because he's playing OpTic. He wants to beat OpTic and stuff. So I'm a little bit questioning the fact if Subliners could maybe pull off this upset. I certainly think they can. But I do think OpTic has potential to win this. I think they're also improving. So it's hard for me to say that I'm going to just pick against them all of a sudden because I do think they're one of the top teams. But I do think Subliners has the upset potential, so I wouldn't be shocked if Subliners win this, but I have to go with my gut and saying that OpTic is a top 2 team and take them 3-1. This other one, Thieves Gorillas, I think I'm going to go 3-0 Thieves. I think they're going to come out hot. I think they're going to smoke them in the hard point. I think they could take a close search, and then I think they'll come out and smoke the control. I think they're just a better overall respawn team, and I think they're also not bad at search, so I think they can take that. So I'm going Thieves 3-0 over LAG. Then in winners round 2, I mean, it's the top 4 teams in the league, so it's tough to predict. Oh man, the top matchup is Empire OpTic. If we know anything about the Huntsmen versus Empire last year, early in the season on LAN, Huntsmen at the time absolutely destroyed Empire. They owned them, and then it went to online, and it kind of flipped, and Empire kind of owned Huntsmen. So it's tough to say where I want to go with this one. But I do think OpTic's the better team right now, and I'm kind of, since we're still early in the year, I'm kind of picking on who I think the better team is right now, and then maybe throwing an upset in there. So I'm going to go OpTic, and I think they're going to win it 3-1. I want to go 3-2, but at the same time, I do think if it goes 3-2, Empire probably wins it. I do this a lot, where I go 3-1 simply because I think that the team that I think is going to win can't win a map 5, and I think in this situation, Empire would probably win the map 5, so I'm going to go 3-1 OpTic. I think it'll probably be something like OpTic takes map 1, and I even think they'll take map 2, and then they'll probably lose the control and then win a hardpoint, make it 3-1, or the opposite, they'll win hardpoint, control hardpoint, and lose the search. But recently they've been losing that map 1 and then rolling off 3 straight. But either way, I do think OpTic's going to take out Empire. I think them playing a match the day before is also going to help them out, kind of going in hot into the next day where Empire, this will be their first match of the weekend. And the next one, Faze Thieves. To me, this has a 5-game series written all over it. I really want to go Thieves for the whole upset because I think most people are going to pick Faze here, but it's hard to pick against Faze, so I'm going to give them the edge, 3-2. Once again, could see LA Thieves winning this if they come out with the fire, but the thing is, Faze are probably the best team in the game right now. So if you're going to predict them to lose, it's hard to predict them to lose in any fashion other than maybe later in the tournament. It's hard to have them lose in their first matchup, but I do think it's certainly possible. I just think overall in this series, when it comes down to it, that flex position, whether it's Kenny or Temp, they kind of seem to be switching off the AR. I just think like Kenny and TJ are going to be able to match Simp and Abezy as best they can. But I think overall between the 3 sub and flexes, between Temp, Kenny, TJ, I think Cellium, Simp, and Abezy might overwhelm them a little bit. But if they come out and have a hot series, those 3, I think they can get it done. Or if those 3 can come out and kind of match the other 3 and Slasher can outplay Arcitys, they have a potential to win, but I'm going to go 3-2 Faze just off the fact that I think they're a slightly better team right now. Could see an upset happening here, though, for sure. All right, so back down to the elimination round 3, Subliners Legion. It's a tough one because it's the 2 teams that I kind of want to pick as both my dark horses, and they have to play down here. So I don't know where to go here. I really want to pick Paris, but I'm going to take Subliners, but I think it's going to be a 3-2. I think Paris is an extremely good team. It's unfortunate to me that they have to play either Mutineers or Serge, who I think are solid, and then probably have to play Subliners or OpTic. They have a pretty impossible run to make it anywhere. I would say if they make it past elimination round 3, that's a hell of a weekend from them because it wouldn't mean taking out Serge or Mutineers, then OpTic or Subliners, then they'd have to be playing Faze or Thieves in the next round. So, I mean, geez, that'd be an insane run. if they're able to somehow make it through. But I think they're going to put up a valiant effort here. I just think New York is a little better team right now, so I'm going to go with New York 3-2. Then the next one's Gorillas Rocker. This is like this bottom portion of the elimination bracket is like the place to make a run. Because I believe Toronto's going to win this. So I think this team right here in the Minnesota-Toronto matchup, whoever wins this is going to be able to make a run because they get to play LAG in the elimination round 3. With that said, that means I'm going Rocker, and I'm going 3-1 Rocker. I think LAG can maybe steal a search off them or steal a control or something, but I just think overall Attach and Priesta are going to be able to outplay Vivid and Apathy. I think that accuracy is a lot better than Assault. Personally, I think Assault's a little overrated. I think accuracy is better. I just think Minnesota's the overall more fundamental, better team, more talented, and I think that talent wins out here, and they're able to win it. Then we've got New York versus the Thieves. I really want to pick. New York down here to like pull off an upset or something, but it's very tough to ever have. I don't know. It's tough to pick against the top 4 when you have a pretty clear top 4 like we do right now. But there's always some team that pulls off that upset. I just don't think that LA Thieves and Empire are going to go out without losing or without winning a match. So I'm going to go Thieves, and I'm going to say it's going to be in a 3-2 fashion. I think that the Thieves are going to be, I don't know. I do think, obviously Thieves 3-0'd Subliners, but that was like the closest 3-0 you could have. It was like a 5-point hardpoint or a 9-point hardpoint or something that was like a 3-2 control and a 6-5 search. So like they did 3-0 them, but it wasn't like dominant or like kind of enforced by any means. Like it was, I mean, a very close series, and New York could have 3-0'd them easily. So I do think New York could win this. But based off like, I don't know, New York, I think this is the match that could screw over my bracket if I'm accurate to this point, because New York certainly has the potential. And based on this, that basically means I'm picking the top 4 teams to go to the top 4, and that never happens. But I'm going to go Thieves, and I'm going to go Empire down here. I'm going to go Empire 3-0, kind of a bold prediction. I think Empire could steamroll Rocker. I think they could blow them out in that map 1 hardpoint. That'll carry over to the Search, and then they'll be up 2-0, and they're a very good control team, maybe the best control team in the game, and I think they'll win it. Good run from Minnesota, though. I do think it'll either be Minnesota or Toronto in this. Regardless, I think one of them is going to make it there. Because I do think that bottom part of the elimination bracket is the easiest portion of it. So then in elimination round 5, we've got Thieves, Empire. This is a weird one to predict because I do think, I mean, obviously Empire 3-0'd them. There were some pretty close maps. Now there's a kind of a weird beef going on between the two teams. So I think there's some extra motivation in this, and this is where I'm going to make my bold prediction for the tournament. I do think Empire, picking against Empire is kind of stupid. So like if this was like a doctor's warning or something, I'd say like there'd be an advise little like read here. It'd be like, warning, doing this, picking against Empire in any tournament is pretty stupid and it's not recommended. But I'm going to go out here and just say, you know what, screw it. I'm recommending it either way. I'm going to go Thieves 3-1 over Empire. I think there's kind of a revenge factor here. I think they're genuinely pissed. I think Nadeshot wants to win this. I think like Slasher and Kenny, those guys, they love playing for Nadeshot. They love playing for 100T. I think there's a little extra motivation here to kind of say, screw you to Hastro and the Empire, build the storylines up and kind of take them out here. So I'm going LA Thieves 3-1 over Empire. That puts us into the winner's final. It is OpTic versus Faze. This is a tough one once again because Faze once again beat OpTic 3-2. They dominated them in search. OpTic should have won that series 3-1 probably. They look like the better respawn team, but they were absolutely outclassed in the search. Faze was 100,000,000% better than them in search, beating them like 12-1 in round count over the 2 maps. But I just have this weird feeling that it's going to be the usual OpTic in their first match, or their first tournament of the year. OpTic always seems to win that first tournament of the year. They did it last year, and they did it in Black Ops 4. That's back-to-back years now where they've won the first tournament. Not saying I'm going to predict them to win this, but I do think they're going to come in through the winner's final. I think they're going to 3-2 Faze. I think they're going to win that map 1 hardpoint. Then I think they're going to get taken out in the search, and then I think they're going to get taken out in the control, and they're going to be down 2-1, and I think they're going to win a close hardpoint, and I think they're going to come out in like 6-3 in a search and kind of like kill the search woes for the time being. All right, so then in the elimination final, we've got Faze, Thieves. I want to just go full out bold and say I think Thieves are going to win this, but I'm not going to be able to do that, unfortunately. Can't do it for the content. Can't make myself look too stupid. Although this bracket is probably the least confident I've been making a bracket in a long time, because it's just such a crapshoot right now with how close all these teams are. But I'm gonna go Faze 3-2. I'm gonna give some respect to LA Thieves. I think they're gonna be able to take 2 maps off them. I just think overall Faze is a little more talented right now. Give Thieves some time, and I think they might be able to beat Atlanta. But just for the time being, I think Atlanta's a little bit too far ahead of them, and they're gonna win it. So then, in the final, the match is a best of 9, it says. So I'm not sure. Obviously, that means first team to win 5, but I'm not sure. Does OpTic start with a 1-0 advantage? They should, because that would seem weird if the match is just a best of 9 and OpTic gets no advantage for being from the winner's side. Usually, I don't know how many of you are new viewers and didn't watch COD in the past, but typically, and like an open bracket, like an MLG Anaheim, MLG Dallas, whatever it was, there'd be the pool play, and then if the top so many teams in each pool would be putting winners, the top or the bottom so many teams would be putting losers. And if you're the team that made it from the elimination bracket or the losers bracket, you would have to win 2 best of 5 series in the finals, and then the team from the winner's side would have to just win 1 best of 5. Which makes sense, because if you're the team that never lost a series in the bracket play and made it into the winner's bracket from pool play, you should have some kind of advantage in the finals. And then obviously the team that comes from losers had already lost a series in the winners, so they have to win 2 series. And I know at Champs last year, Empire started up 1-0 since they were from winners. But I do think, regardless, I actually think I'm going Chicago. I'm going to go 5-3 Chicago, especially if they start with a 1 map advantage. That'll be very helpful. But I'm going to go 5-3. The only reason I go 5-3 is because I do think if it comes down to that last match, I do think I have... if it comes down to that, what am I trying to say here? If it comes down to that last map, Search and Destroy, I do think Atlanta's going to win it, even though I predicted Chicago to win that. That other Search, I think they're probably going to get in their own heads a little bit. If it's a grand finals and it's a last map Search, it might get in their own heads of their Search struggles. That might take over. And FaZe might have some kind of delusional confidence since they dominated him so much in Search, and they'll play a little more freely while OpTic's playing a little more careful, and then they'll beat them. But I do think OpTic's going to end it just before they get a chance to play that last Search in a hardpoint, because I believe the series just goes hardpoint Search, control, hardpoint Search, and then I think it goes like it almost resets, like it goes hardpoint, Search, control. No, it can't go like that. It must go control, then back to Search, hardpoint Search. I mean, I don't know how it goes. But I do think OpTic's going to win at 5-3. I just think overall they typically tend to win their first tournament. It seems like most years, the last 2 years at least. The Scump formal teams or the Scump team, OpTic, Huntsmen, whatever you want to call them, over the last how many years they've won the first tournament, 2 years back to back now. I do think FaZe might be the better team coming into this tournament, but if we know anything about the past, the best team doesn't always win the tournament. But yeah, I'm going to go OpTic to win it here. That might be kind of a bold take. I think you can pick OpTic. I think you can pick FaZe, and I think you can pick Empire to win this tournament. I think you could dark horse Thieves and maybe long shot dark horse New York. But honestly, besides those 5 teams, like looking at the teams, if Minnesota would have gotten a better spot and not started in losers, you maybe could have gone with them. Same with Toronto or Florida. If they would have maybe been winners, you could have gone with them. But yeah, looking at this bracket, I'm going to be honest, I don't feel that confident. I don't have enough 3-0s because there's probably going to be some more 3-0s. But I'm going OpTic, 5-3 on this one. But that is going to do it for this episode of the podcast. This was a pretty long one. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed it. Obviously, subscribe if you enjoyed the content and want to see some more CDL content. And then most importantly, comment down below your thoughts on my reactions to the team. What did you think after Super Week? What did you think about each team? Are there any different takes you had? Any other thoughts you wanted to add to that? And then comment your power rankings as well. And comment who you think is going to win. Who's going to win this major? Is there a team that is kind of in the losers bracket that you think is going to make a run? Or do you think LAG is going to make a run through the winners? Do you have like a bold dark horse? Give me like who you think is going to win and who your kind of dark horse team. So who do you think is going to win, and who do you think between LAG and the losers bracket teams has the best chance to make a deep run into the tournament and potentially win it? But yeah, like I said, that's going to do it. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. This has been Ryan with the CDL Podcast. I'll see you guys in the next one. I hope you're looking forward to watching the major as much as I am this weekend. I can't wait to give the reaction video on that one. So enjoy watching it, and have a great day, everyone. Thanks for watching.